All right. Good evening, everybody. Or good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Grandy with Grandy and Associates. Some of you may be familiar with us, some of you may not. So let me just kind of give you just a real brief overview of my background. Technically, I'm an industrial engineer. Graduated from Virginia Tech way back in 1970. Worked in industry for a couple of years and got involved in small business a little over 33 years ago. Spent about 3 years as a general manager of a service company, so I've got a pretty good idea where you're coming from on a daily basis. Prior to taking that job, I was always told, like most Americans are told, that is, if you own your own small business, you work 3 days a week, make lots of money. Well, that might be the way your company worked, wasn't the way mine worked. It's a long, hard, tough, sometimes frustrating job with a lot of satisfaction in the middle of it. From there, I went to work for the Dial One Franchise Network, which is a national franchise of the service and trades industry. And I worked as the regional director of company development, which meant to help put in basic business practices in the different franchisees' offices. And about 28 years ago, we started a company called Grandy and Associates. We're based out of Owensboro, Kentucky. We work exclusively with the service and trades industry all across the United States and a little bit in Canada. Today's topic, as you already know, is identifying and controlling the 5 profit killers in your service department. In terms of the time this afternoon, we're going to spend some time talking about why service is normally not profitable in your company, although it should be. We're going to talk about who is really running your service department from a functional standpoint. We're going to look at different reasons for poor performance in your service department and whose fault for that poor performance is, tax or management. And then we're going to get into the meat of it, which is the 5 profit killers within your service department. And we'll touch on setting goals just a little bit. Okay? So that's kind of what we're going to cover over the next 45 minutes or so. Again, if you got questions, feel free to type them in, and or we can answer them at the end of the presentation. Now, your service department should be the most profitable department within your company. A well-run service department should run a 15 to 20% net profit, and also if you're on flat rate pricing, that can easily jump to 20 to 25% net profit. But the reality is, within our industry, that's not happening. There's 2 basic reasons for that. Number one, it's service department is normally improperly priced, and secondly, it's improperly managed. Now, why is service underpriced? Well, the cost of running a service department is huge compared to your other departments. First of all, think about the cost of non-billable time. I mean, about half the time you pay your service tech, you can't charge a customer for. Well, if you're paying him $18 an hour plus taxes, he's at 20, and half his time is non-billable. That's $20,000 a year of non-billable time. If you got 4 techs, that's $80,000 a year that's got to be built into the overhead of your service department. It's your number one cost of doing business in your entire company. Secondly, the staff for your service department. Depending on the size, you're going to need a dispatcher. You're going to need a customer service rep. You're going to need a significant staff support in order to cause your service department to run smoothly. Equipment replacement costs are high. Trucks get a lot of mileage on them. Mileage is high, maintenance is high, gas is high, maintenance is high, and overall your general overhead in the service department, it just basically costs a lot to run that department. Now, not only costs a lot to run that department, but there's a very limited number of hours that you can spread that over. So the reality is that most companies, when they run the real numbers in terms of, let me do one thing right here. When they actually run the real numbers, it's the unusual company that can charge less than $100 an hour in service and still make a profit. So number one, it's not priced properly. Number 2, reason we're not making money in service, it's not managed properly. Why? It's a bear. And there's so many variables within your service department. There's never been, at least until recently, any really key KPIs, key performance indicators to measure progress with. Today there's actually 24 of them that you can begin to track your company with, and we'll touch on that a little bit later on today. And thirdly, there's not been a system available to actually track performance and reward technicians. If you want to have a productive service department, you got to set benchmarks, which is your KPIs. You got to measure performance against it, and you got to reward the technicians. The principle is pretty simple. Reward behavior you want repeated. Okay? Now, let me ask you another question. Who do you think is really, when it gets right down to it, who's really running your service department Some of your larger companies, you got a significant size service department, so the obvious answer is the service manager is running that department. Well, that may be true. You may be a smaller company, you're the owner, and you're running the department. You know who's really, really running the department? It's usually your most seasoned service tech, the one with the most years with your company and or the most age on them. What do I mean by that? If you got John Doe, let's say he's been with you 15 years, he's also the highest paid tech, and John wanders into work 15 minutes late most days and nobody says anything about it, gee, what do the other techs think? I can come in 15 minutes late, nobody says anything. I mean, John's been here forever. John doesn't always wear his uniform, or sometimes it's sloppy or not properly shirt tucked in or whatever. But if we don't get on John, guess what? He now becomes the one who's the standard for the rest of the department. If John doesn't fill out his paperwork properly, gee, nobody gets on him. Why should I worry about it? So the reality is your most senior tech, often the one you're being paid the most, is one who's really, really setting the standards for your service department. And that's kind of scary when you begin to think about it, but that's the reality for most companies. Okay? Now, let's talk about poor performance in the service department, because there's lots of different reasons for that. Okay? As we look at each one of these, I want you to think, normally being a class where we get some feedback from you, but we can't do that this morning, so this afternoon. So I'm just going to read them to you. And the question is, on each one of these, like the first one, it says, hourly rate set incorrectly or too low. Is that an M, meaning it's a management problem, or is that a technician problem? Okay. Well, gee, who sets the hourly rates for the service department? It's not the technician. It's management, right? What about number two? Fear of charging what you need to make a profit. Does the tech have anything to do with setting your rates in that area? No. Management does that. What about technician underbilling? Now that one's probably got a little bit of both, a little bit of management and a little bit of technician as well. Technician may not be hitting the mark, but if we don't set a mark and measure against that and help them get better at what they're doing, guess what? Underbilling is really a management problem as much as it is a technician. How about inefficiency causing the need for too many service technicians for the amount of service work you got? In other words, we got more service techs than we need. Is that a technician problem? No, that's a management problem. Too many trips to the distributor for parts. Ah, that's the one. Now the technician, that's their problem. Well, it could be. Could be the way they're stocking their trucks. Could be we don't have a truck inventory. Could be we're not checking that inventory. So that's a little bit of a tech and a little bit of a management situation. What about poor first-time performance completion percentage? Our techs should be completing the job 95 times out of 100 when they go out the first time. If they're not, why not? Well, it could be, again, a technician problem. He's just not doing a great job. But the reality is, who's responsible for that? Excuse me. It's management. Again, we've got to set the standards, we've got to measure performance, and we've got to reward that performance. So again, number 6 is really a management issue. But unnecessary callbacks. Again, that could be a training issue on the part of the company. Could be just poor performance on the part of the technician. So that's a little bit of both. Too many callbacks is the same thing. You know, we shouldn't be doing that without setting the standard, measuring, and correcting the situation. Same thing with unclear performance expectations. If they don't know what there's expected from them as they go out in the field, what's going to happen? Well, they'll just work hard. And what do we say? Hey, guys, work a little harder. We're not making enough money. But without clear performance expectations and measuring against it, gee, what's going to happen? Well, nothing. Poor dispatching. Now, that's another management or at least inside house issue. Weak leadership, being afraid to charge what you right thing because you might lose a technician, being afraid to address those things with your techs. Again, that's a management issue. Same thing with high turnover, wage increases for the technician. So my point in this whole little quick issue right here is this. A huge portion of the burden for underperforming service department rests on management's shoulders, not the technicians. We tend to blame the techs for poor performance, but the reality is we as owners or managers or service managers haven't set the bar, we haven't measured against it, and we haven't rewarded the technicians for good behavior. So the problem is with poor performance in the service department, it's not just the techs, it's management as well. Now, let's begin to talk about the 5 profit killers within your service department. There's 5 of them I want to touch on today. Number 1, underbilling. Number 2, cost of non-billable time. Number 3, lost billing opportunity, that is turning non-billable time into billable time. Poor service agreement productivity, and lost sales leads. I want to go through each one of these in a fair amount of detail because they're happening in most companies today. Let's talk about underbilling. The average service technician, believe it or not, the average service technician cost the company over $10,000 a year by underbilling for work that was actually performed. Now, I'm not saying your tech goes out to the job with the intention of underbilling the customer. That's not what I'm saying. But it happens on a routine basis. It's pretty easy to understand how that can happen if you're on time and material. Gee, the tech was there for 2¼ hours. He just wrote down 2 hours. He used 5 parts. He only wrote down 4 of them. Should have marked them up 80%. He only marked them up 50%. It's pretty easy to see how that could happen on a time and material system. But then we turn around and say, I know, we'll go to flat rate pricing, or sometimes we call it upfront pricing. The price is right in the book. There's no way we can mess up on pricing on that. Well, guess what? It's just as big a problem, if not a bigger problem, when we're on flat rate pricing as it is when we're time and material. Because with flat rate pricing, you know what? On the average service tech, when they go out to do a repair, the average service tech physically repairs 3.2 tasks in the manual. 3.2 tasks per visit. You know how many they physically write down on the average? 2. That means 1.2 tasks that were actually performed never got written down. Well, if they didn't get written down, what happened? We lost the labor, we lost the overhead, we lost the profit, we lost the sales tax, material, pricing, parts, everything. Now, again, the problem there is not totally understanding the flat rate books. The tech did those 2 tasks, and he assumed one of those tasks included this and this, and the reality is it was a separate task. So we've got to do a lot of role playing with our technicians. We've got to go through and help them understand those flat rate books so that they're totally familiar with those, so they can find something instantly. My experience as we've worked with companies who are on our ProfitMax software is that the average tech, at least initially, underbills the customer anywhere from $10 to $30 per hour. I mean, that's huge. The average tech bills out roughly 1,000 hours a year. Even if it's only $10, that's $10,000 we underbill the customer. That's huge. Okay? Now, there's a real easy and simple way to find out if your technicians are underbilling or not. Now, if you just kind of follow along with me, and hopefully each one of you has a handout, you can look at this as well. So step 1 is to calculate what we call the equivalent charge-out rate. That is, how many dollars per hour should our service technician be bringing in for every physical hour he bills the customer. So we start out with putting down our hourly rate. If you're on time and material, use that rate. If you're on flat rate pricing, use the internal hourly rate. In the HVAC plumbing industry, typically we use $21 worth of parts per hour. That's pretty much the standard for the industry. And we should be marketing those parts up 100%. So that's another $21. If you're on time and material and you have a trip fee, put that in. If you're on flat rate pricing, you have a diagnostic fee. Take a third of your diagnostic fee. Let's say it's $49. Take a third of that. That's $16.17. You add all that up, that's telling me for every hour the technician physically bills a customer, he should be bringing in $133.17 per hour. That means if he bills out 1,000 hours a year at $133.17, he should be grossing roughly $133,000 for the company per year. Now, to find out what's going on, what you do is take a period of time and look at the total income that came in for the week, for the month, whatever information you have. Let's say we brought in $108,000 in my service department, and during that period of time we billed out 1,000 billed hours through our flat rate system or on time and material. Well, if I take the 108,000 divided by the 1,000 hours I billed out, that means I'm averaging, bringing in $108 an hour. Okay. Well, gee, I was supposed to be bringing in $133 an hour. I'm averaging $108. Well, gee, if you take the difference of those times 1,000 billed hours a year, that means if that's not corrected, we just underbilled the customer by over $25,000 that particular year. That is a significant, significant amount of money. Okay? We had a company that was on our ProfitMax software. The dispatcher actually noticed that this one tech was significantly underbilling the customer. And she took it upon herself to try to fix that situation without having to go to the service manager. So she asked the technician if he could come in a little bit early the next day. It's something she wanted to talk to him about. And he said, well, sure. So he came in early, and she went through a little equivalent charge-out rate we just went through. Do you know how much we're charging per hour, parts and all? So they agreed we should be bringing in this amount of money for every hour you bill out. Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. So, okay. Now, for the last week, here's the total gross income you brought in the service department. Here's the total hours you billed out. Did a little math. You know what? He was underbilling the customer by right at $27 an hour for every hour for the entire week. He looked at that and said, wow. And then the dispatcher looked at him and said, now we can handle this in one of two ways. You can go back and get really, really familiar with that flat rate book so you make sure you're charging everything out the way you need to be charging out, or we can refer this to the service manager. Which one would you like to do? And you can imagine what happened. But again, he wasn't intentionally underbilling the customer. But on flat rate pricing, you need to have weekly meetings with your technician and go through what we call flat rate drills. Before you get into that meeting, pick out 3, 4, 5 repairs in your flat rate manual. Have all the techs bring in their manuals to the meeting for two different reasons. One, you want to see what the physical manual looks like. If it's neat and clean and not dirty and they've had it for 6 months, what's that telling you? Yeah, they're not using the manual. But bring it in and then have them list one of the repairs and say, hey, who can find this repair the quickest? Everybody looks real quick, and the guy who comes up and gets it first, you know, give him a candy bar, a pen or something, make it kind of fun. But go through flat rate drills like that week in, week out until that book is so familiar with the technicians that they can easily find every repair in there. And that'll help minimize your underbilling in that department. Another significant problem of profit killer is what we call the cost of non-billable time. This is the time that we pay the service techs that we can't charge the customer for. And that's your number one cost of doing business. We touched on that just a few minutes ago. Okay. Now, what am I talking about with non-billable time? That's time we pay the tech that we can't charge the customer for, at least not directly. And that's travel time between jobs. That's sick, vacation, and holiday. That's all time you pay for that you can't charge a customer for. That's shop time in the morning, shop time in the afternoon. Sitting around 10, 15, 20 minutes or more in the morning before they get out on the job. You're paying for that, but the customer can't be charged for it. Again, at least not directly. Company meetings, that's again time we pay for that we can't charge a customer. Work around the office or the shop. You have them come in and do little short jobs every once in a while. It's needed, it's necessary, but it's non-billable in the sense that we can't charge a customer for it. Warranty work, callbacks, customer no-shows. I mean, they're all equate to time that we can't bill the customer for. And again, if we're at 18 bucks an hour with taxes we're at 20 and 50% of his time is non-billable, that's a cost of $20,000 a year. If I got 5 service techs, that's $100,000 I got to build into my overhead of my service department, and that's got to be part of my hourly rate as well. Cost of non-billable time is the number one cost of doing business in your entire service department. So how do we control it? Well, first of all, I suggest you physically track billable and non-billable time. If you will just simply change your time card to show billable time and then also break out travel time or shop time on there, you will automatically, once you have them fill out a time card that physically shows billable and non-billable time, I promise you productivity will increase just because of accountability. Paying a percentage of a job on installation or book hours on flat rate pricing, that will pretty well eliminate all non-billable time. However, if you're going to pay based on book hours, you're still going to have to keep the same records as if you were paying them by the hour. Because if the wage and hour people ever come in, and you have to be able to prove how many hours they worked, did they at least earn minimum wage, and were they paid time and a half if they worked overtime. So even if you're going to pay on book hours, you need to keep the same records as if they were hourly employees. By the way, they will come in and check that. They did to my company years ago before I started this one, and it cost us a bunch of money. Setting up a bonus system is the best way to create or minimize non-billable time. Again, let's think about your service department. Half our time is billable, half our time is not. So if I'm setting my rates based on billing out 20 hours a week, and I can get a technician to bill out 21, 22, 23 hours a week, gee, those extra hours are extremely profitable. They're above my budget. I don't have any fixed overhead on them, so I can pay a bonus for that. Setting up a bonus system works really well to help minimize non-billable time. Dispatching texts from their homes. If you're able to do that and have drop points for cash and checks, the beauty of that is you don't have to legally pay a technician until he arrives at his first job if he's dispatched from the house. If he's dispatched from the office, you got to pay him for the moment he's there. But if he's dispatched from his home, you don't have to put him on the payroll until he arrives. Well, I can save you anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes a day per tech, and that will dramatically reduce your non-billable time. There's also a software program called ProfitMax that measures from a very simple timesheet. It takes about 3 minutes a day to put into the system. It'll measure the 24 key performance indicators for each technician, how they did against the national numbers and against each other. That flows into a Tech 500 bonus program where you can begin to pay bonuses based on real measured productivity for the first time. Also, GPS systems. Many of you have those in your vehicles. Bottom line is anything you can do to help your technicians become accountable will automatically reduce non-billable time. Okay. Now, when we talk about lost billing opportunity, we're talking about turning a non-billable hour into what we call a billable hour. Okay. Now, let's take an example of what we're talking about here. We assumed earlier that a technician bills out half his time. So if we could reduce our non-billable time here by 10% during the week, and that's not a huge amount of time. 2 hours a week, 10% of that 20 hours is 2 hours a week. Well, 2 hours a week times 52 weeks times $133.17 an hour that we should be bringing in per hour. If I could cut my non-billable time by 2 hours a week, that just generated another $13,000 or $14,000 worth of gross income for the year. Just a small tweak, just 10%. That's not a lot, but it starts making a huge difference on the bottom line of your company. Okay. Now, this is a report off of our labor pricing software, but it makes the point. Service department, we talked about that equivalent charge out rate. This particular company should be bringing in $185.88 for every hour they actually bill the customer. That's the labor rate plus the part plus the markup. Now look at the little chart down at the bottom. If we could reduce my technician's non-billable time into billable time just 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes a day, okay, that would generate another $7,400 in gross sales for the year. If I could reduce his non-billable time by 30 minutes a day, and that's doable if you start tracking it, that would generate another $23,000 worth of gross income for the year. So is it worth spending time and energy trying to track their non-billable time and improve it? Absolutely. I mean, the numbers are phenomenal. Okay? Third thing that is a performance killer in your service department is poor maintenance agreement productivity. Now, this problem right here is caused by people like myself who've been training in the industry for years and years and years. We talk about the value of maintenance agreements, and they are valuable, extremely valuable. They add a lot of value to your company when you get ready to sell it. But when we've been promoting maintenance agreements over the years, one of the things I always promote, and everybody else does too, in each one of their presentations is this. When you've got only 5 or 6 hours scheduled for the technician the next day, you can send him out on 2 or 3 maintenance agreements, fill up the rest of his day, and that reduced our non-billable time, kept the tech busy, everything's great. Okay? Well, when we continue to talk about when we do a service agreement, what's the tech begin to think when he comes in at, say, noon, and we say, hey, we want you to go out and do 3 maintenance agreements this afternoon? Well, he starts thinking, they're sending me on a maintenance agreement. That means there's nothing scheduled for this afternoon, so things must be slow, right? Okay. Now, all of nature abhors a vacuum. What do I mean by that? If there's time or space that's empty, it will get filled. So if I send out my technician at noon to do 3 maintenance agreements that afternoon, how long is it going to take him to do them? That's right. It's going to take him all afternoon, because he knows that if he comes back at maybe 3 o'clock, you know what? We don't have any more work. Why don't you just head on home today? So guess what? It takes him the rest of the afternoon. Now, what happens to my maintenance agreement profitability if my maintenance agreement was structured to spend 45 minutes on the job and it takes him an hour and a half instead? Gee, all the profitability on my maintenance agreement just went down the tube. Okay? So we've got to begin measuring the time the tech actually spends on the job. If your company has 500 maintenance agreements and you just spend an extra 10 minutes on the average on each one of them, that's another 83 hours a year times our equivalent charge-out rate. That just cost me over $11,000 in gross sales. There's a couple things that are interesting on our software in terms of your maintenance department. This tells you how many maintenance agreements you need to have. Typically, there's 90 slow days during the year for a technician where he's not fully busy. Let's say in our case we got the equivalent of 2.5 technicians, maybe 2 are full-time and about half of another guy. We normally work 8-hour days, and we work 50% of our time as billable, and it takes me an hour and a half to do a maintenance agreement per year. That says I'm going out there twice if it's HVAC. 45 minutes wrench time twice a year, that's an hour and a half. So if you do the math here real quick, what you find out is the company needs 600 maintenance agreements in place in order to keep the technicians busy, our service techs busy throughout the year. And what I suggest people do here, and it's really pretty helpful, is actually keep a list, keep a board on maybe a cork board somewhere, and keep a running list of how many maintenance agreements each technician has sold. And let's say we did the math, and each tech needs to have 240 maintenance agreements each in order to keep themselves busy for the entire year. Every time our tech sells a maintenance agreement, we're going to keep track of that on the wall. Gee, he sold 125. Now he sold 140. He sold 180. The other guys so far sold 275. Now that slow time comes. We got 3 techs. 2 of them have exceeded that 240 maintenance agreements they need. They've sold that many. And the other guy's at 85 for the year. Okay. Guess who's going to be laid off first? So we track the number of agreements, and the guys who have hit their goal and created enough work for themselves, guess what? They get to stay on, while the ones that's not been producing might be laid off for a day or 2, depending on how busy you are. Okay. This is a huge one right here. This is called lost sales leads. Most service techs fail to inform the customer and management about old equipment that needs to be replaced. Failing to inform the company management and the sales team of possible equipment replacement is costing your company tens of thousands of dollars a year in terms of retrofit replacement. That is a huge, huge problem. Many of us in the industry kind of hit a wall. We can't get above that 800,000. We can't get above that $1.2 million or $2 million. We just kind of hit a plateau and we can't get above it. What I'm about to share with you will cause you to move through that quickly, very, very, very quickly. Now, let me preface what I'm going to talk about right here with these comments first. In general, I do not want my technician pricing the replacement of equipment on the job. The reason is the typical service tech will underprice that job anywhere from 20 to 40% because he's not a trained salesperson. They're not going to talk about efficiency. They're not going to talk about setback thermostats. They're not going to talk about zone heating. They're not having the ability to size the equipment properly. They have a cookbook formula, and that's what they go by. Okay? But a trained salesperson has the ability to do all the things I just talked about. So a technician will tend to underprice a job anywhere from 20 to 40% versus either the owner or a trained person being out there. But what I do want to happen is I want my technician to create what we call a qualified sales lead. Okay? Let me define a qualified sales lead for you. A qualified sales lead goes like this. The technician goes out to the house. He repairs a piece of equipment. He notices when he's repairing the equipment that it's an old piece of equipment. Maybe it's 18 or 20 years old. And he gets it up and running. Everything's going fine. He goes back to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and says, you know, I've got the equipment running. Everything's going fine right now. However, Mr. and Ms. Jones, you may not be aware of it, but your equipment is 21 years old. Sure, it's running today, but you know what? It's not going to last much longer. And besides that, there's equipment that's much more efficient, will get you much more comfortable. It runs much more efficiently. It'll cost you less money. Mr. and Ms. Jones, would you be interested in having somebody come out and give you some information on the possibility of replacing your equipment? If the homeowner says, yeah, I am interested in that, then what we want the tech to do is to literally pick up his cell phone or the customer's phone, call the office, say, hey, I've got Mr. and Mrs. Jones here. They're interested in setting an appointment to have someone come out and evaluate their equipment, and with the possibility of replacing it. You hand the phone, the tech hands the phone to the customer, and they set the appointment with the office. If it's done in that way, you know what? 97% of the time when that salesperson shows up, the customer will be there. If you went through that exact same scenario, but the technician left the house, he's now going to the next job, he calls the office and, hey, call Mr. and Ms. Jones. They want to set up an appointment to talk about the possibility of replacing their equipment. If it's not done in front of the customer, it's done after they leave, 67% of the time the customer will be there when the salesperson shows up. Well, there's a big difference in 67% show up and 97% show up. So we want the technician to set the appointment in the home. Okay? Now, when he sets the appointment in the home, we want to pay him something. We want a spiff. Generally, we're going to pay him $20 to $25 for setting the appointment. Okay? And if the salesperson goes out there and they close the deal, we're going to pay the tech another $20 or $25. So the technician has the opportunity to earn another $40 or $50 on potentially any service call he goes on, not by selling the equipment, because we don't want him to sell the equipment. We want him to set the appointment. And techs don't like selling anyway, but they don't mind setting an appointment. Now, you've got to role play with them. You've got to get them comfortable in that process. But if you do, the numbers are absolutely staggering. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The key performance indicator for a qualified sales lead is this, 12%. What that means is all the calls the technician goes on, 12% of those should be turned into what we just described as a qualified sales lead. Okay? Now let's do a little bit of math. Let's say we got 12 sales leads per month over 12 months. The average replacement cost is $3,700, which is low for most of you, and we only close 50% of the sales. Our close rate is 50%. If we hit the 12%, that's $266,000 worth of additional replacement equipment during the year. That's huge. That's if he hit only 12%. Even if he hit half that, that's another $100,000 to $200,000 worth of additional replacement equipment. Not selling, but just setting the sales lead. Okay? Now, there's a retrofit calculator for that in the software also. If you got 5 calls a day, we got 2 service techs, and they work 240 hours a year. You take out vacation, and the KPI is 12%. And your average replacement of a system is $6,000 and he closes 60% of it, that has the potential to increase your retrofit sales over $1 million a year. That's huge. Does that require or incentivize us to spend a little time talking to our techs, teaching them a script, role-playing with them so they can at least set the leads for our company? I mean, that's huge, and that's if he hits 12%. Okay? Now, the KPI for old pieces of equipment, and you determine what's old, is 33%. So let's assume instead of the 12%, when you mix in the old, we got 18% rather than 12. Okay. Well, gee, at 18% with the same equipment, now we're up to $1.5 million in gross sales. I mean, if we only hit 50% of that, what's that do to my company in terms of growth? And it's all coming from the fact that we're just having the techs learn how to set the appointment while they're in the home. I mean, that can cause retrofit sales to literally skyrocket. So underbilling, cost of non-billable time, lost billing opportunity, poor service agreement productivity is costing the average tech, average company over $70,000 a year, and those are conservative numbers. While at the same time, increasing our retrofit sales $200,000 to $300,000 a year. That's huge. Okay? Now, what are the benefits of setting specific goals for your technicians? Well, number one, everyone on the team has something to work towards. If you don't have a goal to work towards, we just go out and we do what we do every day. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. We don't know what goals are going to be hit. And we don't really care because we're not shooting for anything in particular. So let's everybody have a specific goal. Goals provide a benchmark to measure your progress against. And best of all, and this is amazing, best of all, once a specific goal is set, individuals tend to meet or exceed that goal. I see that happening over and over and over again. whether that's a supervisor with specific goals to hit, whether that's a salesperson, whether that's a technician. You set a specific goal and measure performance against that goal, they tend to hit it or exceed it. We have a lady who works in our office. Her name is Linda. We do a 2-day program called the Planning for Profit program. Her sole purpose is to get contractors into that particular program. She's been working with me for about 2 years. Bottom line is we started running the numbers, and the numbers of people that she was getting into a class wasn't sufficient to cover costs properly and make a reasonable profit. And I went back to Linda and I said, okay, Linda, we've done some research here, and what I found out is we need this many contractors in every single session that we put on. She looked at me and she said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? I said, I've been working here 2 years. I've never gotten that many people in any of your programs. And I said, that's the number. I mean, that's where we need to be. Now, here's the deal, Linda. If you can hit or exceed that goal, if you hit the goal, there's this many bonus dollars involved for you. And if you exceed the goal, you not only get the dollars for hitting the goal, but you get additional dollars on top of that. Well, you know what? For the next 3 months in a row, she didn't just hit the goal, she exceeded the goal, even though she'd never done that in her entire life. But before that, we just said, hey, work really hard and get as many people in as you can. We never set a goal, and we never measured her performance against that goal. There's a real simple process, and it's called reward performance you want repeated. Reward performance you want repeated. And if we'll do that on a regular basis, guess what? People will tend to exceed the goals, again, if you hit them and you reward them for it. Now, when specific goals are set, what's going to be the reaction of your technicians? Well, guess what? Those who are doing a poor job are going to become defensive. I don't want to be measured. I don't want you looking at my numbers. I don't need to fill it out. Why? Because they're doing a poor job. The irony is, those technicians who are doing an outstanding job, guess what? They want to be measured. They want you to know they're doing a good job, and they want to be rewarded for doing a good job. So when you introduce a program and you start measuring productivity and profitability of your technicians, the defensive people are going to be the ones who are doing a poor job right off the bat, and those who are doing a great job will embrace the program immediately. Okay? It all comes from top management. That's where the direction comes from. Many, many years ago, some of you may remember when the Charlotte Hornets had their first professional basketball team. And the first few years, they were miserable. I mean, they just lost game after game, had terrible seasons. And as always happens when there's a terrible season, it's always the coach's fault, right? So they fired the coach. They hired a brand new coach. Coach comes in. He has his first meeting with the existing team. And there must have been a reporter in that same meeting because I read this in the paper. And anyway, the coach had his initial meeting with the basketball team, and he started telling the guys, hey, I know you've had rotten seasons up to now. I know we've not done what we need to do, but hey, we're putting in a new system. We're going to do this, this, and this, and my goal is within X period of time, we're going to be in the playoffs. And then he turned around and looked at the team. You know what he said? And he said, and the reality is, most of you guys sitting here today won't be on that team. But his point was quite clear. This is the direction we're going. Follow me and we'll do it. Otherwise, go find another team to play for. And that's when we get technicians who have poor attitudes, don't want to embrace the program. They've got to be replaced with technicians who are what I call a career technician, who want to do a really great job for you. Okay? So in summary, understand why your service department is normally not profitable and deal with the core issues, which are usually pricing and management. Find out who's really running your service department. Find out if it's your senior tech or the person who's actually supposed to be running it. Understand the foundation stones for poor performance in your service department. And realize that management plays a huge role in the performance of technicians. It's usually a management problem when you have poor service productivity, not so much a technician problem. And then think about the 5 profit killers we just went through, and if any of those are happening within your company, try to tweak those a little bit so performance obviously increases. And then set specific goals, measure the profitability against those goals, and reward people for it. Again, remember, service should be the most profitable department within your company. And if you correct the pricing and the management issues and the 5 profit killers we talked about, excuse me, that can really, really happen. Now we always have, whenever we put on a webinar, we always have what we call a webinar special for you. There's some free things that are available to you. If you'll check this off, this is the last page of your handout that you got. You can copy that and fax it back to the office, or you can scan it and email it to me. We have an audio presentation called Overcoming the Fear Factor of Raising Your Rates. That's free of charge. We'll also send you the 24 KPIs with the definitions for your service department. Those are the 24 key performance indicators we need to begin measuring within our service department. We'll also start sending you a free email newsletter that we send out once a month with just 4 articles on ways to increase the productivity and the profitability of your company. If you'd like those free things, just check it off right here and fax it back to my office or scan it and email it to me. In addition to that, we have a 2-day program we do across the country called Planning for Profit. It literally covers everything it takes to run a profitable company from the business side of the business. We go through labor pricing, cash flow budgeting, collections, what to track, how to track it. It literally covers everything it takes to run a very profitable company. You can see the schedule in the upper right-hand corner, so if you're in any of those areas and you're interested, just check this off and we'll get back with you with some additional information. It also includes the $2,650, allows you to have up to 3 people come for that same price, and that includes a $300 travel voucher to help pay for some of your travel expenses. Okay? And the final thing is a company overview. I do a lot of one-on-one company overviews with people on site. It takes 2 days. We bring in the software program that we've created for your industry. I model the company on the computer with your team by department. Out of that tells us what's making money, what's not making money, creates month-by-month cash flow budgets for you. You have the ability to actually price a job in a matter of minutes on there. It'll set your maintenance agreement pricing, and not only all that, but once you're through, we'll literally push a copy button, make as many duplicates as we need to, and start going through the what-if process. Now, what if we hired another tech, changed an overhead cost, bought another vehicle? Put the proposed changes in there, hit the button, and we can instantly find out how that affects the hourly rate, the cash flow, and the profitability of your company. It's on-site. We work with as many team members as you want. You'll notice on here the price is normally $4,500 plus travel. Because you're going through the webinar today, it's only $4,000 plus travel. We still got 2 or 3 openings for the rest of the year. So if you're interested in the free stuff, the Planning for Profit or the company overview, just click those and again fax them back to the office, or you can send me an email either way. Okay? So I appreciate your time today. If you got any questions, feel free to ask them right now. I'll be glad to go through those with you. So I'll turn it back over to our hosts.
Well, it looks like we might not have any. Oh, here we go. In tracking time with maintenance agreements, why don't you treat the time as prepaid revenue instead of lost time?
It is prepaid revenue. The lost time we're talking about is when they exceed the amount of time that it should take to do the agreement, which they're supposed to be on the job for 45 minutes and they're out there for an hour and a half. That extra 45 minutes is non-billable time, but we should treat it as prepaid revenue. It's when they don't do the job within the required time limit where we get the problem.
Okay, let's see. Got another one that just came in.
Okay.
In your opinion, what is the best incentive program for the techs in a T&M shop?
It's actually no different than for the people on flat rate. It's taking at least some of those 24 key performance indicators, be it the number of callbacks that you have, the daily goal that should be met. I mean, there's 24 of them, and you can get those free if you send that in. But it's setting specific goals like that and then measuring their productivity against it and then rewarding them for that. Again, you set a specific goal and measure the productivity and reward them for it. They'll tend to meet or exceed those goals.